Chinese President Xi Jinping exchanging hugs and rolling out the red carpet for Putin, announcing the, quote, deepening of the comprehensive partnership and strategic cooperation entering a new era, and condemning, quote, U.S. attempts to violate the strategic balance. That, as the Biden administration unveiled hefty new tariffs on China this week. But is a trade war really enough to take on this new axis of evil? Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow on China Strategy, Michael Pillsbury, joins us now. Michael, so great to have you on. Thank you for joining us this Saturday. So I want to talk about the tariffs, but before I do, let's talk about the Ukraine war, because a lot of people predicted that the Ukraine war would bring China and Russia together. What are your thoughts on that, strategically?
I think the Ukraine war has brought them together. In fact, it's a combination of Chinese purchases of Russian oil and natural gas and Chinese sales of high technology, dual-use items are called, that keep Putin and Russia into the game. This is a strategic nightmare to see the two of them hug like this. Usually, President Xi Jinping is a little more restrained. He's not an Italian hugger. He's a good Chinese communist leader. So this is quite troubling. To me, it's the opposite of what President Trump was doing. President Trump wanted to have decent relations with both of them, better than they do with each other. That was the old Henry Kissinger goal. But in this case, Biden seems to have driven them together and prolonged the war. I also noticed the Chinese let Putin talk about Nazism, that he's fighting Nazism in the Ukraine. And Putin himself seemed to support China's claim that it owns Taiwan, so it can do whatever it wants. So this is just a sad day and a really big contrast to what President Trump was trying to do when he was in office.
Who are these dumb so-called experts in the State Department and in the Pentagon? This was predictable. It just makes me so mad. So now the answer that Joe Biden comes up with is tariffs. He's finally going to, put some tariffs in. So what do you make of this new move? Will it be effective? Why wasn't it done before we saw these hugs?
Well, you notice that President Trump is on Truth Social has talked about how these tariffs are nothing. They should be much higher. Biden did keep the original tariff tariffs that President Trump put in. The key thing is they're much larger. It's $100 billion worth of revenue at the minimum that Trump brought in with his tariffs. What Biden seems to be doing is the little pinprick to play to the auto workers that I'm trying to keep Chinese electric vehicles out. I don't think it's working because they're simply too narrow and too small a level of tariffs.
Well, we know that this administration is not going to do anything to end or help negotiate peace in Ukraine. In fact, they have actively thwarted peace efforts by other countries. So, but in a perfect world, would that do something, bringing about a peace negotiation, putting an end to this world? Would that stop the bleeding, if you will, in terms of the deepening, as they called it, of this relationship?
Well, we need some kind of negotiations over the Ukraine. This is something Mr. Trump has also talked about. He never would have allowed the Russian invasion in the first place. But the Chinese held out the idea that they would sort of broker a peace deal in the Ukraine. But you'll notice in the coverage the last couple of days of this long conversation they had, there's no more talk of negotiations over the Ukraine. Probably Putin talked Xi Jinping out of playing any kind of role like that. So again, what we're seeing is our two enemies, if you will, our two strategic adversaries being driven together. They also are criticizing American nuclear weapons, which in fact is the opposite of what's happening. China and Russia are outgunning us if they combine their nuclear forces. This is another example of the cost of driving them together. We want to reduce the number of nuclear weapons in the world, not increase. And yet China is the only major power now, Rachel, that's building more nuclear weapons. And some of them are in touch with the Chinese and Russians together, are in touch on how to improve their nuclear forces. This is really quite troubling and a new blunder by the Biden team, I think.
Yeah, a blunder indeed. Bad for our security. Also has huge implications on our currency, which is another weak spot for us as well. Michael Pillsbury, thank you for coming in, talking to us. It's not happy news, but it's news we need to know, especially ahead of an election. Thank you.
Thanks for the bad news.
Yeah, you got it. Take care.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.